Every blockchain must answer the same existential question. When two versions of history compete, which one is real? This is the MadBrooks Sage. AI generated, not financial advice. Today I'm speaking with ALGO, a quantitative analyst who models consensus mechanisms and chain reorganization probabilities. ALGO, let's start with the fundamental problem. Why do blockchains even need fork choice rules?
Because distributed systems cannot guarantee simultaneous agreement. When two miners find valid blocks at approximately the same timestamp, the network temporarily fragments. Node A receives block X first. Node B receives block Y first. Both blocks are valid by protocol rules. Both reference the same parent block. Without a deterministic selection mechanism, the network remains split indefinitely. The fork choice rule provides the tiebreaker that reconverges distributed state.
So we need a way to let the network pick a winner without a central authority making that call. Bitcoin uses the longest chain rule, which most people have heard of, but I think there's confusion about what that actually means in practice. Walk us through how it works and why Satoshi chose it.
The longest chain rule is more precisely the most accumulated proof-of-work rule. When a node observes competing chains, it follows the chain representing the greatest computational expenditure. In Bitcoin's case, this manifests as chain length because each block represents approximately equal work. The economic logic is elegant. Extending a chain requires burning real resources, electricity converted to hashing attempts. An attacker attempting to reorganize history must not only catch up to the honest chain length, but continuously outpace ongoing honest mining. The probability of success decreases exponentially with confirmation depth. After 6 confirmations, assuming the attacker controls 30% of hash rate, reorganization probability drops below 0.24%. The rule transforms a coordination problem into a cryptographic and economic problem.
That exponential decay is key. Each new block makes reversing history harder, not linearly but exponentially harder. But I want to dig into a subtlety here. When there's a temporary fork, both sides are growing simultaneously. The network doesn't freeze and wait. So you might have two competing chains, both adding blocks until one pulls ahead and the other gets orphaned. What's happening during that uncertain period?
Correct. During a fork event, miners partition based on which block they received first. Both factions mine on their respective tips. The fork persists until one chain establishes a length advantage, at which point rational miners switch to maximize expected reward. Miners on the abandoned chain waste resources mining blocks that become orphaned, receiving no reward. This creates organic incentive alignment. The uncertainty period typically resolves within 1 to 3 block intervals for accidental forks. Transactions included in orphaned blocks return to the mempool unless they were also included in the winning chain. Users who received funds in an orphaned block see those confirmations evaporate. This is why exchanges wait for multiple confirmations before crediting deposits.
And that waiting period is really about letting the network reveal which chain has the economic weight behind it. Now Ethereum moved to a different model before transitioning to proof of stake. They used Ghost, the greedy heaviest observed subtree protocol. How does that differ from Bitcoin's approach, and why did they need something different?
Ethereum's faster block time, initially 15 seconds versus Bitcoin's 10 minutes, increased the natural orphan rate. More frequent blocks mean more network latency relative to block interval, which increases fork probability. Ghost modifies the selection rule to consider not just the main chain, but the entire subtree of blocks. When choosing between forks, Ghost weights chains by the total number of descendants, including uncles, blocks that were valid, but not included in the main chain. This allows the protocol to harness orphaned work as evidence of hash rate support, rather than discarding it entirely. A chain with fewer direct blocks, but more uncle references, can be considered heavier than a longer chain with less total work in its subtree. The rule reduces the advantage attackers gain from network latency and makes selfish mining strategies less profitable.
So it's acknowledging that in a faster system, you need a more sophisticated way to measure where the economic majority actually is. You're looking at the whole family tree, not just the single longest branch, but both of these are probabilistic finality systems. You never get absolute certainty, just exponentially increasing confidence. Proof-of-stake systems introduce something different with finality gadgets. What changes when you move to that model?
Finality gadgets overlay deterministic finality onto the underlying fork choice rule. In Ethereum's current Gasper consensus, the fork choice operates continuously via LMD Ghost, latest message-driven Ghost, where validators attest to their head block each slot. But every 32 slots, an epoch, Validators have the opportunity to justify and finalize checkpoints through a supermajority voting process. Once a checkpoint receives 2/3 of active validator stake support and the subsequent checkpoint is also justified, the first becomes finalized. Finalized blocks cannot be reverted without destroying at least 1/3 of total staked Ethereum through slashing. This transforms economic security from probabilistic to deterministic within the finality threshold. The trade-off is liveness risk. If more than 1/3 of validators go offline, the chain cannot finalize, though it continues producing blocks.
That's a fundamentally different security model. Instead of saying an attacker would probably fail to reverse this, you're saying an attacker would definitely lose a massive amount of staked capital if they tried. But you're also introducing this new failure mode, where the network can get stuck if participation drops too low. It's choosing a different set of trade-offs. How do you think about which approach is more robust for different use cases?
The choice maps to application requirements and threat models. Probabilistic finality with the longest chain rule maximizes liveness and censorship resistance. Bitcoin will continue producing blocks even if 90% of miners disappear, just more slowly. Recovery from network partitions is automatic through the heaviest chain rule. This suits a system prioritizing unstoppability over settlement speed. Deterministic finality suits applications requiring strong settlement guarantees within defined time windows, financial contracts, bridges, complex DeFi interactions. The liveness trade-off is acceptable when social coordination can resolve extended finality failures, which Ethereum's community has demonstrated capacity for. There is no universally superior rule, only optimization for different priorities within the impossible trinity of decentralization, security, and scalability.
And this gets back to why understanding these mechanisms matters. When you use a blockchain, you're trusting a specific set of rules to determine what's real. If you don't understand whether you're getting probabilistic or deterministic finality, you don't actually know what security guarantees you have. You mentioned chain reorganizations. For someone listening who's never experienced one, what does it actually look like when your transaction gets caught in a reorg?
From a user perspective, a confirmed transaction disappears. You check a block explorer and the transaction hash returns not found. The block that included your transaction no longer exists in the canonical chain. If you were the recipient, funds you believed you controlled are no longer in your wallet. If the transaction was also included in the winning chain, it reappears, possibly with a different confirmation count. If it was not included, it returns to pending status. Exchanges have been victims of double-spend attacks, exploiting exactly this mechanism, particularly on smaller proof-of-work chains, where renting majority hash rate is economically feasible. An attacker deposits coins, receives credit after several confirmations, withdraws to a different asset, then releases a longer pre-mined chain that doesn't include the original deposit. The exchange loses both the deposited coins and the withdrawn asset.
Which is why confirmation requirements exist, and why they vary based on the economic security of the chain. 6 confirmations on Bitcoin means something very different than 6 confirmations on a chain with 1% of Bitcoin's hash rate. ALGO, last question. We're seeing experimentation with new fork choice rules, things like Avalanche's repeated subsampled voting, different finality mechanisms. What's the frontier here? What problems are new consensus designs trying to solve?
Current research targets the latency security trade-off. Classical BFD protocols achieve single-slot finality but sacrifice liveness under network partition and scale poorly beyond hundreds of validators. Nakamoto consensus scales to thousands of nodes and tolerates arbitrary network conditions, but requires many confirmations for security. Newer protocols attempt to capture benefits of both. Avalanche uses metastability and repeated random subsampling to achieve finality in seconds with thousands of validators. Algorithmically, nodes poll small random validator subsets. If a supermajority supports a block, confidence increases. This repeats until a threshold triggers irreversible acceptance. The security argument relies on the statistical improbability of attackers consistently appearing in random samples proportional to their stake. Other designs explore single secret leader election to prevent targeted DoS attacks or verifiable delay functions to create unpredictable randomness for committee selection. The fundamental challenge remains. Distributed systems cannot simultaneously guarantee safety, liveness, and efficiency under all conditions. Fork choice rules embody different solutions to this impossibility.
Different solutions to the same impossible problem. That's really what all of this comes down to. Every blockchain is making deliberate choices about which guarantees matter most, and those choices show up in how the network decides what's real when faced with competing versions of truth. Thank you, ALGO. See you Tuesday. When two chains compete, the fork choice rule isn't just picking a winner, it's revealing where power actually lives in the network.